Hello and welcome to episode 77 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet in my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is December 21st, 2020. And this is going to be the last episode of this year as I'm going to take the next week off. So the next episode I will film the next episode on the first Monday in January. I'll start as usual with what I'm wearing, and I am wearing a cowl that I test knit for Milstein, who's the designer, and it's just a quick, fun little cowl that has this rib pattern on one side, and then it's like a triangle with the rib pattern and without, and because of that, it's slightly wider on one end and a bit narrower on the other. And I think it's really nice, easy to knit, and it's a nice fun pattern. And the fun thing is I showed it on my podcast before, and oh, by the way, the colors come out really in a really funny way because this side has lots and lots of yellow and this side has no yellow. So that was just a fun little something that happened while I knit. Anyway, I wore the cowl before on my podcast back when I was only doing German versions, and about a week after I had done the podcast, I was contacted by Deb on Ravelry, and she told me that she noticed a lot of Germans buying this pattern, and she was surprised, and she didn't know why they were suddenly interested in the pattern. And because I'm probably the only German she knows in the knitting world, she was wondering whether it had to do with me. So I told her about my podcast and that I'd shown it there, and that was probably the reason. So that was quite fun. And the other day she posted something on Instagram, and I commented on that, and I told her that I have started this English channel now, and that all my podcast episodes come out in English as well. And then she asked me if I was interested in offering a coupon code to you all for all her patterns. And I thought that was very generous and very nice, and especially now right before Christmas, I thought that was a very nice gesture. And so now she's offering the coupon code Kikos Podcast 20, all in one word. I'll put it down underneath the video so you can look it up there, and I'll also put a link to her designs on Ravelry. The coupon code also works on her homepage, on her webpage. I'll have to look that up. I'll try and link that as well. So the coupon code works on both those pages, and you can get 20% off any of her designs, which I think is really nice. And thank you again, Deb, for offering that. And the coupon code will be good until the end of January. So you have the rest of December and all of January to look at her designs and pick whatever you like and get your own pattern. Yeah, so because she offered that, I just had to show this again. I have one of her shawl patterns already, and she told me I could pick another pattern, and I think I've already picked one. I'll let you know when I start knitting it. But so I show you that, and please go and have a look at her patterns. That's the cowl I was wearing, and the jacket is knit out of Icelandic yarn, Alafoslopi and Letlopi, and it has these many colors and patterns. And the interesting thing about it is that the most of the colorful yarns is a thin yarn held double, but because I'm holding different colors together, I get lots of different shades, which is really interesting. Whereas the black yarn is a thick yarn, and also this blue and this red is a thick yarn. And I did not knit the whole thing back and forth because I don't really like doing color work and purling and having the floats on the side I look at. So it's a lot easier to knit it in the round, and that's what I did. I knit the whole jacket in the round, and then I steeked it. It's the first garment I steeked, and just in case you don't know what steeking means, it means you knit something in the round and then you cut it open. And you certainly don't just cut into it like that, but what you do is you can reinforce the edges either with a sewing machine, which I did not do. I did it with crochet. I crocheted a line up and down next to the stitch I wanted to knit. And the other thing you do when you want to steek something is that you knit some extra stitches that are not part of the pattern, but they have their own little pattern so that you know exactly where to reinforce the stitches and where to cut. And then what happens, because it's stockinette stitch, it just flops over. And I also sewed it down just a little bit. I wouldn't have had to do that. I just thought it looked nicer and a bit neater that way. And then I crocheted a little button band and some buttonholes. It's this black on black thing again, but there's the loop for the button. And then I couldn't decide which color button to get, so I got 4 different buttons. I always wanted to get a 5th one, but never got around to doing that. So I linked the pattern on my Ravelry page. I knitted almost exactly as written, only I shortened the sleeves. I shortened them a bit too much, but the thing is that the pattern that I would have had to knit is this whole pattern, and if I'd added that, the sleeves would have been way too long. And I should have just knit the black cuff a bit longer. I hadn't realized they were going to be a bit too short, but I don't mind. I can wear wrist warmers or mittens or something, or just longer sleeves underneath, and that's okay. Yeah, and I think I also omitted something in the yoke because it would have been too long, as I'm fairly small. But I'm with the rest of the fit, I'm very happy and I love it. And I knit it with an 8mm needle, and it's a pure wool and it has all the float, so it's really warm. And most people think it's too warm to wear inside, but hardly anything is too warm for me. So I really like it and I wear it a lot. Yeah, so that's what I'm wearing. And then on to finished objects. I have one finished object, and you will probably feel reminded of last week because I finished the same, not exactly the same, but it's the same kind of project like last week. I finished another hat, and it's another spiral glitter hat. So it's just a different color and a different size. And I knitted some ribbing. At first I wanted to knit the pattern as long as I needed it to be, and then have this rolled hem the way I did with the other hat. But then a friend of mine suggested I might do ribbing. It might be easier, a better fit. And also she said it might look nice to have those stitches that go like this, to have them move down in the ribbing, and she was right. And the fit's really good. I'm really very happy with how it came out. I probably ruined my hair now, but doesn't matter. So it fits really nicely, and with a doubled hem, it's really warm. Yeah. Now all I need to do is finish my pullover so I can wear them together. Yeah, so that's the finished object of the week. Now on to works in progress, and I do not have quite as much to show as usual, I feel, but that's probably because I haven't knit on many of my usual works in progress. So I haven't knit on any of the blankets. I did knit on one of the blankets, but I did not knit on the cat blanket, not on the marine blanket. I did no work on my Carnaby crochet alongs, and I did not knit on any of the socks or the leg warmers that I showed you the last 2 weeks. But I started a new one. So yeah, I did knit on one of the socks. It was a new cast on last week, and I continued knitting on the sock that will have a cat face on the foot later on. So that's the only sock I actually put some work in, except for the new cast on. And that's a problem, isn't it? That it's so much fun to start new things and to knit on the new cast-ons, and it sometimes means that the other things stay unfinished. And especially with the glass window sock with the color work, I finished the cuff of the second sock, but I just couldn't get myself to start knitting the color work, and I really have to make sure that I don't get second sock syndrome. And it's a bit the same with the brioche sock and the brioche leg warmer. I've already knit a bit on the second one of each of the pairs, but yeah, so that will be one of my main priorities for the winter holidays, of the Christmas holidays, to make sure I finish those. But I also will enjoy this fairly new cast on, especially the first one will be a lot of fun, but also with that one I will make sure I do knit the second one. And now I am actually getting too warm. Anyway, so that's the Opal ice cream, and I have decided that I'm going to finish knitting this light stripe, and then I will stop and add the black. And then with the second one, it'll be just a little bit different, because I will have finished the light stripe. So the second sock will start on this stripe. They will be almost the same. And I was thinking that I will just do the same and knit and stop with the light stripe on the second sock, which will mean that the black part will start in a slightly different place on both of the socks. But that doesn't matter. I can still knit them the same length, so they will fit the recipient, and the cat faces will just be a little different, which I think is quite funny and absolutely okay, and I'm pretty sure the recipient won't mind getting two slightly different socks. Yeah, so that's a sock that you've seen before. And then my new cast on, I decided sort of last minute 2 days ago that I needed another Christmas present. And I started knitting a sock out of pure baby alpaca. So it looks very tiny, but it's because the rib pattern pulls it together like that. So the recipient has about the same shoe size as me. So I tried them on and they fit me, so they should be okay. And they're certainly not for running around in shoes outside all day, but they're rather meant to be bed socks or sofa socks. And I knit them toe up because I was hoping to get one sock out of one ball of yarn, and it's looking good. I finished the heel last night, and this is all I have left, but that should be enough to knit enough of a leg that the socks stay on nicely, and they should be really nice and warm. And because it's DK weight yarn, I'm pretty sure that I can either get them completely finished by the 25th. That's when I'm going to see this recipient. Yeah, and if I'm not completely finished, I will finish on that day, and then I can give them to her. And because it's machine washable, she can even wash them in the machine, and I hope they will keep her warm and cozy. I will not be able to show you the finished pair because I'm definitely going to leave them with the recipient, but I will make sure to take a picture, maybe with the recipient, maybe just the socks. We'll see about that. So those are 2 Christmas presents, but I think these are the only Christmas presents. I'm trying not to knit too many Christmas presents, especially not in December. So if I want to give something for Christmas, I try and make sure knit it beforehand, like my sock couple that I knit every year. I sent them off today, so I finished them several months ago. But that's the way I like Christmas knitting. So these last minute things I'm usually not too happy with, but it's DK socks and they're not too big. So, and it's an exception. It's just something that I only just now thought of. And I only had the yarn just a few weeks ago, so couldn't have thought about that in summer. Anyway, I have 2 more projects on double pointed needles. I'll show you one now and one later. I continued knitting on my Japanese gloves by Bernd Kessler. That was the first one I showed you last week, and this is the spot I marked for the hole I want to knit for my index finger on the second one, and that's exactly how far I got with the second one. So this is what it looks like. Got my yarn tangled around. Okay, so this is what the glove looks like while you knit it. This is the thumb, and then it sort of grows from here. And so from measuring and counting, I decided this should be about the place I want the little hole for the index finger. I'll show you the other one. So with this one, it's way too high to be really practical to do things. So I marked off this height, and it looks a bit lower now. I meant it to be like here. So it looks a bit lower, but then the things stretch in different ways when you wear them. So I'm probably going to trust this measurement and just cast off a few stitches now and then cast them on again. I just have to make sure I do it in the right place. So I didn't have the brain space to be doing that, which is why I stopped knitting at this point. But once I've done that, it should be fairly easy to finish it. And then once I start work again and I start using my bike again, I hope to have them to wear while I ride my bike. This is the Shafpatensocken opal yarn. It's the DK weight 6-ply, and I really enjoy knitting it, even though I can't really feel the soft yarn so much because the mohair silk is what I'm feeling most when I touch this. But I think it's a nice combination. Yep, I enjoy that a lot. So that is that. Then I knit a bit on the grey and black jacket I am knitting. I knit another ball of yarn of the black yarn onto the collar, and again I put the second cable in so you can see the whole jacket. And so basically almost looks the same as last week, except for the fact that this is double the width it was last week. And I tried it on. I'm very, very happy with the fit and the size and everything. And now I'm even thinking I may not put all 7 balls of black yarn onto this jacket. It might actually be too much of a collar. So I'll just keep knitting, but maybe 5 balls of yarn might even be enough for the collar. But I'll just keep doing what I did. I'll knit 1 ball of yarn and then I'll try it on, and I'll keep doing that until I decide it's nice and I like the way the collar looks and feels and everything. Yeah, it's, as I keep saying, fairly boring to knit, as it's just, well, it's not plain stockinette stitch now. It's this seat stitch that you switch every other round, every other row. I really like the way it looks. It's a bit difficult to see with the black yarn, so I try to knit it when I have good lights on or during the day. So it is growing slowly, but as long as it keeps growing, I'm happy, and one day I'll have a very nice and boring jacket, but it will be perfect to wear with all my colourful pullovers. So that's that. And then I have another new cast on. And I just told you when I showed you the mittens that I was knitting the Shafpatensocken by Opal in the DK weight, the 6-ply. I don't know if I have explained what Shafpatensocken means. This is a line of yarn that uses only German wool. And it's the sheep that this yarn comes from live in Germany, and the whole yarn is produced and spun and dyed and everything in Germany, so it's a completely German yarn. And from every ball of yarn that's called Schafpate that people buy, €1 is being donated to keep this traditional work with sheep in Germany alive. So they have had this yarn, they've been producing Schafpate yarn for 10 years now, I think. And during that time, they've put a lot of money into the work, and they've been able to buy new or breed better sheep. No idea how they do that, but the yarn's really a bit softer than other opal yarn. And knowing that it was produced in Germany is a good thought, and the sheep are really happy, and they're supposed to be very happy. And yeah, especially Germans who live in that area really enjoy buying this yarn, knowing that the sheep sort of live in their neighborhood. And usually they only produce this yarn in sock weight, as a sock weight yarn, 4-ply yarn. And this year is the first time they produced some DK weight yarn. And this is one of the colors, and this is another color. And because with the gloves it's more the mohair, I feel I wanted to knit another project out of this series, and I decided to knit a Hitchhiker, and I forgot to bring the book. But Martina Behm, who's the designer of the Hitchhiker shawl, and I think it's the pattern that she became famous with, and that was, I think, her first really famous pattern. She came up with another book, and it's called Hitchhiker something family, or Hitchhiker and Beyond something. I'll link the book underneath the video so you can have a look. And in that book there's of course the Hitchhiker, but there's all the other shawls that she has designed that use the same basic shape as the Hitchhiker. And yeah, the book was published just a few weeks ago, and I ordered it, and there's quite a few of the shawls in the book that look interesting that I might knit someday. I've helped people knit a Hitchhiker shawl many times, but I've never knit it myself because I kept thinking it was fairly small and a bit boring. But now I'm at a point where I think sometimes boring is quite good if my brain's just too busy. It's nice to have something easy to knit on where you don't have to think a lot. And also by using the DK weight yarn, I make sure it gets a bit bigger than the original. And sometimes I just need a little something around my neck. So it doesn't always have to be a huge big shawl like the Stephen West thing I was knitting some time back. So I started knitting the Hitchhiker. So just in case you haven't heard of the Hitchhiker, which I can't really believe, but it's this asymmetrical long triangular shawl that has these thingies on one edge. And the thing it's called Hitchhiker is that when she finished the prototype, she had exactly 42 of those corners. And because 42 is the answer to life, the universe, and everything in the Hitchhiker's Guide Through the Galaxy, that's why the design was called Hitchhiker. And yeah, I've finished my first 7 of those. And I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to do 42, because even though I have the same yardage on this ball of yarn, because it's 150 grams, it's the same yardage as 100 grams of sock yarn, sock weight yarn. I'm using bigger needles than I would for the 4-ply yarn, so I'm not quite sure whether I'll get the same number of these. But because the whole thing is going to be a bit bigger, I should be absolutely fine with 40 or 38 or whatever. I'll just knit until almost all the yarn is gone. There's a number given in the pattern how many grams you should keep to do the last edge and for casting off. But yeah, maybe when I see that the yarn, I don't have too much left, I probably weigh the yarn between one point of casting off and the other, and then I'll know how much I will probably need And then, yeah, I'll just try and knit as much of that ball as I can. So that was the second new cast on, just for fun, just for myself, and just for something easy to do. And of course, to try out the yarn. That brings me to the knit-alongs. And I am taking part in 3 knit-alongs. I'm taking part in 1 and I'm hosting 2. So I'll show you the one that I'm just taking part, and that's the Mystery Gnome by Sarah Shearer, and I'm not up to date. I've been just so busy. I didn't even take the time to knit my few rounds on the gnome. In case you don't want to see it, you have to look somewhere else right now. So you've seen the hat before, and I have just added a bit to the body, and I've added this stripe. This is the first time using the color 4. Looks really funny. I should have finished the body by now, and I should have knit another I-cord, and I will do at some point. And I'm definitely sure that by the time I record next time, which will be in 2 weeks' time, I will have finished the gnome. Christmas will be over, and all the preparations and stuff will be over, and I should find some time to just sit down and finish the little guy. And I just can't wait to see where all the pieces go and what is what. And yeah, still a lot of fun. It's the most of it is Wolldackel yarn, except for the very colourful one, that's Hansa Farm. But it's a line of yarn they discontinued, unfortunately. Yeah, so that's the Adventurous Gnome, Nutmeg. And then I have done a little bit of knitting on my flax pullover, which is the knit along for all the patterns in the Simple collection by Tin Can Knits. And the only thing I did is I finished knitting those 2 balls of yarn that I was knitting the front and back with. And now that I've finished those, I can start knitting the sleeve. But again, sleeve knitting or starting a sleeve is something that needs a bit of brain power, which is something I just did not have. So it's not a big difference to last week. It's just a tad longer than it was. I'm still looking forward to this jumper. I'm really happy with how it's coming along. And at some point I will start a sleeve and maybe even finish one. We'll see. And then my last project for today is the Optic blanket that I showed you last week. And last week I had finished 3 of the squares and I was knitting the 4th, and I have finished the 4th square. So that wasn't a lot of work. But the other thing I did is I wove in most of the ends. So as you can see, no more ends hanging around on either side except for this one. And I kept this for a reason, because it's an end that hangs at this point where the where 4 squares are going to meet again. And usually when those squares meet, you tend to have a hole at that point. So if you have an end hanging there, that's quite convenient to be able to sew it together. So that's what I did at this point. There was one of the squares started there, so I had this black end that I could use to just fill the gap in there. I had another end either here or here, but I wove that in because I've decided that that's going to be like the outside, and I'm going to add squares this way and that way, but not there or there. And I can only encourage you, if you knit the knit along with me, and if you haven't knit a blanket before, make sure you weave in ends every now and then. Doesn't have to be after every square, but like every 2, 3 or 4 squares is a good idea, because then it's still manageable. And if you keep it to the very end, you might end up with a nice blanket with all the ends hanging there, because you can't be bothered to weave in all the ends. And it can be quite a lot if you wait for the whole blanket to be knit. Yeah, so I'm happy. That's finished, but I didn't get around to starting the next one. And I have been thinking, so at the moment, I am planning to do the blanket 6 squares wide and 9 squares long. And I would divide it into 3 parts. So I would knit 3 parts with 6 squares wide and 3 squares high. And I'll do 3 of those and then just have 2 seams to sew. Then the knitting won't be too cumbersome and there won't be too much sewing. So that's the plan I have at the moment. And I'm also thinking I might try and do 1 square every week, which would sort of mean I need 1 year to knit the blanket. And I think knitting a blanket in 1 year is not a bad idea. If I do it quicker, that's fine. But if I take a year, that's fine. And that means you don't have to rush your blanket. We can knit together on the blanket for a whole year. And maybe you knit 2 small ones or just 1 small one. Or you do a huge one and do 2 squares every week. Whatever. But yeah, you don't have to rush these things. And if you have these small goals, like doing 1 square a week, that's not that much knitting, and most people I think can fit in 1 square in a week, or even if you do a square every 2 weeks, or you do like 2 or 3 squares a month, as long as it's goals that you can sort of manage and you feel, yeah, you're capable of doing that, then you can get a whole blanket done. Because I know a lot of people think, oh, that's so much knitting, I will never be able to do that. And then they go on knitting and they knit a lot of things throughout the year, and if you put them all together, that'd be 3 blankets, and they never realize because they only do those small things. Yeah, so that's the Optic blanket. That was everything I knit and crocheted last week. As I said, not too much, I was quite busy, but anyway, now you know what I was up to, and I wish you all nice holidays, even if things work out differently than usual for most of us, I would say. I hope you are healthy and you'll be well, and I will see you all next year. Bye!